The Los Angeles Clippers are coming off a much-needed come-from-behind victory against the Memphis Grizzlies, and as I was watching them make their comeback during the fourth quarter, Coach Tyronn Lue, he went with a lineup that I think could become the Los Angeles Clippers' new death lineup. And before we get into what that lineup was, I think there's a few things we need to talk about with the Los Angeles Clippers. Okay, so first things first, I think at the NBA trade deadline, the Los Angeles Clippers, they did one of the best jobs out of all the teams in the NBA. I know we had some teams that made some big splashes. The Phoenix Suns getting Kevin Durant, the Lakers getting D'Angelo Russell, but I really love what the Clippers did, bringing in Bones Highland, bringing in Plumlee, and also bringing in Eric Gordon. I thought those were some great additions. And then also, I think about a week later during the NBA buyout market, Russell Westbrook was brought out from the Utah Jazz, and Paul George really pushed for the Los Angeles Clippers to sign Russell Westbrook, and they ended up doing that. So now the Clippers, they have so many great pieces and so many great role players, and I think this is what's really important for what's coming up next. So after they added all these new pieces and they added Westbrook, the Clippers, they went on a 5 before they beat the Memphis Grizzlies. They were on a 5-game losing streak, and this wasn't no normal 5-game losing streak. Some of these games were historic, some of these games were crazy, and I think this has been really emotional damaging on this Clippers organization, the team, the coaching staff, the fans. I think this has been a very rough 5-game stretch. And we look at this 5-game losing streak. The first game came against the Sacramento Kings, one of the most historic games in NBA history. It went down as the second highest scoring game in NBA history. I believe the Clippers lost by 2 points, and the final score was 178 to 176. So when you battle for 2 overtimes and you can't pull out the win, you lose by 2 points, that could be a little emotional draining. And then also they just had some pretty close games, and not to mention the competition on this 5-game losing streak was pretty solid. They played the Sacramento Kings twice, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Golden State Warriors, and the Denver Nuggets. So some pretty crazy things happened in all these games actually. The Golden State Warriors, Jordan Poole, he got really hot in the third quarter. Up until that point, I thought the Los Angeles Clippers, I thought they were in control of that game, and I thought they were going to cruise on to a victory. Another loss that I like to highlight is the second game against the Sacramento Kings. No Kawhi Leonard, and you could tell the Clippers came out with some extra energy that night. I thought Russell Westbrook, he played really well. He was really aggressive, scoring the basketball and setting up his teammates. And then down the stretch in the final seconds of the game, the Clippers had a very costly turnover, which led to them losing. So we get to this 6th game of this stretch against the Memphis Grizzlies, and the Clippers, once again, from the first quarter, second quarter, they look very in control of this game. And then the third quarter comes around and something crazy happens again. I thought last night would be an easy win with the Clippers. All that's going on with Ja Morant, and they just lost Brandon Clark. A lot going on for the Memphis Grizzlies, and they're already a team that struggles on the road. But in that third quarter, they look like one of the best teams in NBA history. They dropped 51 points. Tyus Jones couldn't miss, and neither could Desmond Bane. And I believe they ended up going up by the most they went up by was like 16, 17 points. And then going into the fourth quarter, the Los Angeles Clippers were down by 14 points, and it looked like they were heading to their 6th straight loss. And that was until Coach Tyronn Lue went with the Los Angeles Clippers' new death lineup. The lineup that led the Clippers to a comeback victory was Russell Westbrook, Eric Gordon, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Marcus Morris. So it is a very small ball lineup, and there was no center. Now, my absolute favorite thing about this lineup is that it gives the Clippers a little bit of flexibility on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. We look at them defensively and how they were getting beat. I don't think the Memphis Grizzlies were doing anything special, or that they had a play that the Clippers just couldn't stop. But the Los Angeles Clippers, for whatever reason, last night they just could not contain the ball. could not stay in front of their man. And also Jaren Jackson Jr., whenever he had Zubac or Plumlee on him, he was able to blow right past them on the perimeter. So Tyronn Lue, he made an executive decision to go without a center for that fourth quarter. And we know the Memphis Grizzlies, they have a pretty big front court. Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman, those are two bigs. Those guys are considered big men in the NBA. And I actually like this move by Tyronn Lue, because now that flexibility you have defensively with 5, wings and 2 guards out there, now you can switch everything. And I think they were comfortable with switching everything because even though Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman, those guys are big men, they're not dominant post players. I wouldn't say they're elite post scorers like Jokic or Joel Embiid. So they were comfortable whenever the Grizzlies got into their 2-man action and the Clippers switched, and then the Grizzlies tried to force that ball down low in the paint. They were more than comfortable with Paul George or Kawhi Leonard guarding those guys one-on-one. And as soon as they tried to make any move towards the basket, a double team would come, and now you're forcing those guys to be playmakers, and that's something that they're not accustomed to because all season long they've had Ja Morant. And another thing I like that I saw from this group, and this shouldn't just be in the Clippers depth lineup, this should be whatever lineup the Clippers have out there at all times that have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. But in the fourth quarter, we've seen those guys take on full responsibility of guarding Desmond Bane and Tyus Jones. And then once Kawhi was on the point guard and then Paul George was on Desmond Bane, the Memphis Grizzlies, the entire fourth quarter, their offense became stagnant because the Clippers had their 2 best perimeter defenders guarding the Grizzlies' 2 best perimeter threats. So I was really excited to see that, and I was really impressed because recently the Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they've had such heavy workloads as far as rebounding and scoring the basketball. So to see them play such heavy minutes last night and then have the ability to lock in on the defensive side of the ball, that's a great sign for the Clippers going into the postseason, because we all know when it comes to playoff basketball, the rotation gets shorter and your best players are going to be playing much more minutes. So Tyronn Lue, I expect for the rest of the season, his main rotation guys, they're going to be playing higher minutes to get ready for that playoff stretch. So love seeing them lock in on the 2 best perimeter players for the Memphis Grizzlies, and I think that played a huge role in them coming back to win that ball game. So I love the flexibility that this lineup allows for the Los Angeles Clippers. You can switch everything, and since the Grizzlies did not have a true low post threat, you were able to trap, double team, and force bad shots or force turnovers. And I feel like these guys with this lineup, they also get flexibility on the offensive side of the ball. And whenever you have Russell Westbrook, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard on the offensive side of the ball, scoring points should always be easy. And that's what we've seen since Russell Westbrook has come to the Clippers. They have been scoring a bunch of points. They're getting out in transition more, and the offense just looks a little bit more faster. But what I saw last night was the Los Angeles Clippers, they were just mismatch hunting. They were looking for the guy that they wanted on either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George, and whoever they wanted, that guy will come up and set a screen so that guy could get the so that person could switch onto Kawhi or Paul George, and then they would go to work. And that's what really happened down the stretch of that game. Paul George, he was fantastic. Kawhi Leonard was amazing down the stretch, and also you can do some other things offensively. Like there was one play, man, huge play from Russell Westbrook where he had Luke Kennard on him, and Luke Kennard, he's not as strong as Russell Westbrook. So Westbrook took him to the post, and now that you don't have a big in the game, now that you have Marcus Morris on the perimeter, you have Eric Gordon out there on the perimeter, Paul George and Kawhi Leonard down the stretch, you're not going to leave those guys wide open for a 3-point shot. So Westbrook, he just out-muscles Luke Kennard, and he gets a very pivotal and one for the Los Angeles Clippers. So just being able to do things like that, put Westbrook in a position where he can succeed, because he's one of the best finishers this game has ever seen. Whenever you can get him isolated with 4 shooters around him, I think that's when you're going to get the best version of him as a scorer. So I love this lineup for the Los Angeles Clippers. And it could be different sometimes. Sometimes Westbrook might be on the bench, and it might be Norman Powell and Eric Gordon in the lineup, or it might be Westbrook and Norman Powell in the backcourt. But I think the front court is always going to be the same. Marcus Morris, he always brings tough defense and he can rebound the basketball. And Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, whenever it's down the stretch, those two guys are always going to be on the court. So we all know how important small ball lineups are in the playoffs. They can be very critical and they can change the outcome of a series. And I think we all saw, the small ball lineup all started with the Golden State Warriors when they would run Andre Iguodala and Draymond Green at their power forward and center position. So I expect to see this lineup a little bit more from the Clippers coming down the stretch of this season and going into the playoffs. But just wanted to talk to you guys about that today. That's going to be it. If you enjoyed, please leave a like. Comment down below if you agree or disagree, and then subscribe for more weekly content. We do this all the time, man, and that's curtains.